Please join me in welcoming director Jared Jakins, producer Carly Jakins, and our moderator for the Q&A, Diane Fraher, who's the founder of American Indian Artists, the multi-arts organization, and a filmmaker herself as well.
Just briefly, I'm Diane Fraher. I'm from Osage Nation. I also have documented Cherokee heritage as well. And as she said, as Alex said, I'm a narrative filmmaker and the founder and director of Amarinda, American Indian Artists. It's the only organization of its kind for Native artists in the whole country. So let's get started with some interesting questions that we have here that I'm dying to know the answers to. Okay. How did you first come across the community, and what led you to want to know, to make a film and to tell this story?
The first I heard about the Navajo Mountain community, or the Na'atsasan community, I read an article in a local paper about this high school that is, one of the most remote high schools in our nation, and that they had just founded a competitive robotics team, and that was like the first thing that I guess kind of caught my attention was, this extremely remote place, and they're going to be doing this, technologically, like difficult thing of building robots and competing with them, because if you've ever been, seen like robotic competitions, it's like resource intensive, and it's so like students who live 6 hours away from a Home Depot they're going to build an interesting robot, and I guess I should back up a little bit. I'm originally from South Africa. My family immigrated when I was very young. And we moved to a tiny Mormon community in Utah. And I guess growing up, I found myself feeling somewhat like an outsider. And as we began making films, I was drawn as a director to stories of other folks who maybe are isolated, or either culturally or geographically. A lot of our films deal with folks who live in really extreme places. And so that just spoke to me, this idea of this high school in such a remote place. High school has a lot of drama, just universally. And so that was our first foray into the community. And as you could see, the film didn't have many robots in it. And yeah, there's one scene where there's a remnant of a robot. And what happened was, as we were making the film, as I was pursuing this, we got funding to make a robotics competition film, because that was like, investors are like, yes, take my money, that sounds great, which apparently never happens. But as we were, spending more and more time with these students, I found that was not the movie that they wanted to be a part of. That was not the movie that they wanted to make. That was not their story. And that was about a year into production, a year into our budget. And we had to make a hard decision. Were we going to be filmmakers that sort of imposed our voice on the community, or were we going to listen and, try and do right by the trust that we were given? And so we pivoted, and from that moment on, it became a really close, deep collaboration with those three youth that you see in the film. And they started planning. We kind of mapped out exactly what their stories were going to be, and they came up with the scenes that they wanted to shoot, and we planned it and coordinated it, and that's the result.
So it was a very close collaboration. Yes. As these are the Children's Resilience in Film Awards, how do you define resilience, and how do you think the protagonists of your film have demonstrated it?
So, there are so many obvious circumstances that these kids are going through, the trauma, overcoming obstacles and challenges, and the overarching lesson of resilience that maybe they just show us is that they are just overcoming the colonization, just even in the classroom sometimes, that the teachers just aren't as educated in dealing with Indigenous students. And so the students are still overcoming and keeping those beliefs and those traditions that are important to them.
That's great. I think that's great. I've been kind of thinking about the word resilience, and I guess it really, the more I think about it, it really feels like it's something that's innate, that makes us human. It's like curiosity. It's as important as curiosity or love, and everyone has it in them. And some people get the ability, or they exercise it more, And as filmmakers, when you get the opportunity to witness that, I think it's powerful because it's something that we can all learn from. And certainly these youth are just absolutely amazing, brilliant, funny, so much joy, So it was just a treat.
Although very young, they were old in so many ways. They knew things that we could all learn from, I think. Who do you hope is especially impacted by seeing scenes from the glittering world?
I think, we made this film for those three youth, and all of our decisions were sort of predicated on that. And so that was our hope, was to reach them, let them see themselves, see their strength, their own strength that they have inside of themselves, and then, children that live, in their community, their cousin brothers and sisters, and obviously as wide an audience as possible is great, but I think deep down, really, we were just hoping that they would be able to engage with the film and enjoy it.
And some of the rewards of that, when we were able to bring the film down to them for the first time, like as a completed product, and they saw themselves for the first time put in this way, and they saw their friends, the other two in the film, and they learned things they never knew. They were just so impressed with their peers and impressed with themselves, and it was you could see it was empowering for them. And Elle got to meet us for the Sedona Film Festival, and she was in the audience, and Granite, both of them. But as Elle and Granite came to the front and answered questions, and neither of them had done public speaking before, but they were amazing. They were the experts on the film. They were the experts on themselves, and everybody wanted to hear about them in their lives. And so it was a very special experience for them. And as Elle was leaving the theater, all of the, lots of ladies patting her on the back, grabbing her by the shoulders or arms and telling her how amazing she was. She was like, I thought that she was going to hate it and like be embarrassed or whatever. But she had never had that sort of experience before and absolutely loved it.
So it was transformational,
Mm-hmm.
which is from seeing them where they were reluctant to share their feelings or their thoughts in the classroom to really owning them and being proud of who they were. Pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
Opened the door for them that they didn't have. They didn't seem to have any support at home, nor didn't seem to have very much support in school in the way that they needed it. So your doing the film must have opened up a door for them that didn't exist before.
I hope.
Bravo to you.
Thank you. And I hope so. They do. Each of these kids had very supportive maybe like grandparents or someone. They did have someone at home.
Generation missing. That
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It gave them the generation that's supposed to give the hope. Is what I see.
Yeah, well, and I think there's 3 really critical scenes in the movie, and they're conversations, and like for instance, Noah, it's him and his father speaking. They hadn't really talked like that before, and that was Noah's idea. He wanted to shoot that scene. That was, I just captured something that he wanted to have happen, or Elle and her grandmother, and we really wanted to show that. 'Cause I think there's a common misconception that youth on the reservation maybe don't have a lot of support at home, but I found the complete opposite. I found that they had remarkable, strong individuals in their households that were there for them, and so we tried to have those critical moments be with that person in that person's life, or whoever that corresponding person is.
The weight of all the neglect and the abuse that's been visited upon Native communities can feel crushing at times, but I saw a lot of resilience, as we're talking about here. So, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in just the making of the film?
That's a great question. So we live in Utah, and we're kind of close to the community, but it was still about an 8-hour drive. And the school's so remote itself that the state of Utah built housing for the teachers, because it's quite out there. And so the logistics of being in this place for almost 2 years, so far from everything, you can't, I remember one of my producers, another producer, when we first started engaging with the community, he's like, let me look at Airbnb and see what's around there. It's like, yeah, right. There's the nearest hotel would have been a 4-hour commute. And so we were really fortunate enough to be able to live in the community at some of the teacher housing that wasn't being used. And so that was a challenge, but it was also the thing that allowed us to engage with the community in a meaningful way, because we were able to live there and be there. Yeah, that was, well, and being an outsider to a community is a challenge, period. And we knew that coming in from the beginning, and that's something that, every day we were trying to make sure we were doing an okay job with. So that was a big challenge.
I think that's really important, this idea of community-based films and how that experience elevates them and brings out things that otherwise would be missed. So I think that's very important, what that means. Certainly as a Native person, I see that, but I think you experienced that too. What led you to, we've sort of talked about this a little bit, but what led you to focus on the 3 kids in particular who star in your film?
As we kind of touched on before, those 3 kids they were either responsible themselves, and they also had a kind of a supportive net at home, so that they could, they're teenagers, so they were a little bit more reliable. They were interesting and were willing and wanting to share themselves on camera.
I think that's a good. I like to think that they selected us, like they sort of self-selected to be in the film. At the beginning, Noah was the first student that we really knew was going to be in the film. And that's because he was kind of the captain of the robotics team, and that's because he was really good with the controller, and he was like, "This is mine. I'm going to drive the robot." And so we kind of knew he was going to be a focus. And then Granite and Elle, just as we spent time at school observing them, they kind of got more comfortable with the camera faster than everyone else, and invited us home to meet their families, and that's sort of how it happened.
This is you've sort of talked about this, but it'd be interesting to know more about the process, but how did you get the particular kids that the stars, so to speak, and the ones where the film focuses on, and their families to open up and trust you in a self-selecting community like that? And to
I don't know. I think it came down to time, just sort of continually showing up to school every day, like going back to high school for a year, and going to the community events that we were invited to. I think they just saw that we weren't trying to steal a story and run away with it, and like we were committed to really trying our best to get to know them. And of course, at the beginning, it was all about this robotics team, and so it was very easy to make a pitch about what we were after. It's harder to pitch a film called Scenes from the Glittering World, because it's a bit more meandering than like a competitive genre film. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
I think it brings us back again to something that was really revelatory that you both shared with us, is this idea of community-based filmmaking, where that you don't have everything that a commercial situation might have, but what you don't have is filled in by the community, and that creates relationship. To be in relationship with one another is something completely different, which is really comes through in the film. It's the beauty of it, I think, that's undergirding the whole thing. As an outsider to the community and the culture, how did you navigate the filmmaking and storytelling process itself?
Is there a Danae audience member here today? No. The first thing we did was we went to the community leadership in the Navajo Nation. Every community is broken down into what's called a chapter. And before we even went to the high school, we went to what's called the chapter presidency and met with them and explained what we hoped to do and asked them if they felt comfortable with us doing that. And the chapter president became one of our advisors for the film. His name's Hank Stevens, which I guess another note is we created what's called a cultural advisory board, which was led by one of our producers named Ronnie Jo Draper, a Yurok woman who has spent 35 plus years as an educator. She's a teacher educator, so she prepares teachers to become teachers, but especially to engage with indigenous students or underserved communities. And she gathered individuals from all over the country of various tribes, and the majority of them were from the Navajo Nation. Two of them were leadership in that community. One of them is the Navajo teacher that you saw in the film lifting the weights, Mr. Bedoni. And they were critical. I mean, having that core group that whenever we had a new scene, we would send it to them and say, does this work? And they'd say yes or no. And there were times where we were like way off the mark. We'd totally missed something. And, we just, you listen, because we don't know better.
Again, this idea of community and being in relationship with the people, very important. Do you have any updates on the kids themselves featured in the Scenes from the Glittering World that you can share with us?
I'll update on Granite, and then maybe you do Noah and Elle. Or I'll update. I'll tell you. You tell about Granite. So Noah, after high school, he started a business with his uncle, and they're actually doing very, very well. They're selling firewood, but kind of at like a big scale. They're going and gathering wood in a traditional way that is they select trees that have already died naturally, and then they season it perfectly, because Noah, he can expound on the fact that like wood, at least in his community, that people are very, very picky about their wood, and it's got to be perfect. And he's like a connoisseur of firewood. So and he's doing really well. He just bought a gaming PC, and he's picked up gaming again, and he's doing really well. And he also just bought his first truck, which he sent me some pictures of. He's really pumped about that.
And then Granite, this past summer, he's shown some interest in becoming a filmmaker. And so this past summer, he worked with Jared's production company and did a month-long internship. He just graduated high school. And he went on a plane for the first time and got to travel to some other states. And just learn a little bit about what it might mean to work in the film industry. And at the beginning of the internship, he was like, well, I'm not interested in college. I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to hang around home. But by the end of the internship, he had decided that he wanted to go to community classes and still pursue film. So we'll see what happens. We cross our fingers for him.
And then Elle, she graduated as well, has continued to work on her comic books, and she just got a job. She just told me she was quite positive she was going to get a job in a nursing home, and she's saving money to go to college, and she intends to do that next spring. And she's just wonderful.
We have a little bit of time for some audience questions. I'd like to open it up. Please raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone over.
How did you arrive at the title?
Glad you asked. Well, over the course of attending high school again and sitting in Mr. Bedoni's Navajo culture class, he emphasized the importance of the Navajo creation story. And I'll do my best not to butcher it, but essentially he taught me that there are 4 worlds, and there were 3 worlds previous to this one, and they were all represented with sacred colors. So the colors at the beginning and the ending of the film, black, blue, yellow, and white, represent those worlds. And there's names for those worlds. And the English translation of the 4th world, or the world we live in now, he explained was called the glittering world. So it's a way of saying scenes from the modern world.
Really magnificent truths in this movie and beauty, and you captured it so well. And I was curious, the land was a character in the movie, and you talk so much, there was some discussion of that in the movie that was beautiful. Did you think about that? I mean, cinematography was amazing. You sculpted each piece poetically, and it was a painterly feel to it. Was that I'm sure that was conscious, and how long did you scout all those locations and the timing? You must have driven Carly crazy as a producer to just the light. You gotta have the light, right? So, how did you think about that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think we had a shortcut, and that was that each of these students, these youth, had sort of a spot that was special to them, and they were excited to show it off. And so each of their critical core conversation scenes were in places that they chose, that were significant to them in some way. And so then all we had to do was wait for the light and just show up. And it's hard to shoot a place that beautiful poorly. It's just so beautiful. I mean, you can just turn your camera on. It does all the work for you.
I just had a question about, there are a lot of sensitive issues in the film, psychological things, all kind of deep issues. Had you had experience filming this type of work before among other groups of people or other youth, not necessarily Native, but other groups, so to give you that understanding as to what you should cover, what you shouldn't, and so forth and so on?
That's a great question. This is our first feature-length documentary, and this was the first time that we've made a film with youth. So it was a crash course, and I think it was really just about listening to and recording what they wanted to give us, and then, you know, some things stuck out. And as a filmmaker, you're often thinking about, you know, like structure in terms of, I mean, as audiences, they really are drawn to tension, you know, but there's also a temptation to just focus on that, and so there's a balance.
And something about the community, when we first got there, like you'd meet someone for the first time and they'd just be like, "Hi, I'm this person," and, you know, 5 minutes later they're telling you about like the tragedy of their lives, and so you're like, okay, that's one of the hard things you've been through. I mean, they just offer it up. Like, we never pushed. We have 2 little kids. Like, you just, yeah. If they want to talk, they can talk. And we wait, and we're just patient and wait for that.
Early on, I had a crew with me early on in the process, and I found that didn't work. I had to send them home, and it became just me and a camera. I ran audio myself because that was a barrier. And I found that once that was sort of taken care of, that intimacy was able to grow. But I also found that sometimes crew members would get impatient with the process, and they would start asking questions. And that wasn't the plan. I wanted to wait and be patient and kind of maybe be annoying and just like say, I'm just going to sit here with the camera, talk to me about what you want. Yeah, so some changes had to happen. But.
I can't tell you how moved I was personally by this film. I think I'm going to have this lump in my throat for the rest of the night. And I feel like what really struck me was that your presence and your attentiveness and your caring really maybe awakened a sense of hope in the kids. Because I don't normally have this reaction watching documentaries, but you know, you could hear the bravado in the kids' voices, and they're trying to play it off, and this doesn't really matter, and that doesn't really matter, and of course it matters more than anything. And I think that, you know, you're presenting yourselves the way that you did, and your openness, your gentleness, it was just rewarded by such sharing, and it's really magnificent. So I want to thank you for your work, and you know, when I didn't see Granite graduate, I go, oh no, what's happening to him? But so thank you for the updates as well.
Thank you to Shine Global. Really, it's such a great opportunity to share the film here. Thank you.
We have time just for one more question.
Hi. First of all, I have to thank you for the patience. I feel like watching the film, it was very like you really just took time and breathing and a lot of cute animals. But I had 2 quick questions. I know I'm cheating. But first, I just wanted to, when you were saying how, because this project started as investors asking you to do, you know, about the robotics. And then when you made the turn, I was wondering how they reacted to that. And then secondly, I know you guys have 2 young kids, and when you were, you know, living out there, I guess the kids were with you, and I'm wondering how they reacted to living on the reservation.
Well, I'll handle the investor question. I gotta say, I gotta give credit to our investor. He was really trusting, and yeah, I mean, his first, there was a pregnant pause on the phone. If you can imagine when I said, I've cut the robotics team out of the film. There's a long pause and then a why. And he really got behind the reasons why we wanted to shift. And I think he, in a lot of ways, thought, well, there goes my investment, potentially, but I'm going to trust you. And I'm happy to say that the film's made all of its money back. So good for him. But yeah, I mean, Carly can attest to this. There was maybe 2 weeks of turmoil where, you know, I was really stressed, really nervous about the decision.
And then to answer the question about the kids, it's fun to watch the film because I remember like what we were doing while Jared was filming, you know, off on his own with the rig. And I was just on standby and kind of looking out for when he needed anything with the kids. And so our kids they were both under 6 when we were doing most of the filming. And they mostly had a lot of fun. When there are a few scenes that they were present when we were recording sound. So that was it was a little more difficult to like have them like, okay, you need to be like, you can't, let's go play over here, not with the other kids right now. And so we just didn't put them in situations like that very much. There was no childcare, so they just helped us when they could. And a lot of the landscape scenes, we were there with Jared, the whole family, and the kids just played while we worked.
They definitely made friends. I mean, a lot of the scenes, like our children are playing with new friends just out of frame, and you can actually hear their voices quite a bit throughout the film, just mixed into the chorus of laughter. So that's like, it's nice for us to hear their voices as well and recognize them. Yeah, it was a great experience. They talk about it all the time, something that they look back on fondly.
Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. Thank you
Thank you.
to Jared, Carly, Diane.